Good morning. Today is Saturday, February 4th, 2023. This morning I'm receiving thoughts and inspiration around this phrase, the movement from externally fixated to internally grounded. And maybe the word maturity or maturation. And it seems to me that there are natural cycles of maturation and movement from one space and consciousness to another. The inspiration for this started coming to me today when I was contemplating the energy of the north and south nodes of my personality in the human design system. And the 53rd gate is the energy of the north node in my chart. So I was reading more about that again because as I'm maturing in my own consciousness and I look at things, I learn on a new level, or I see things in another way or a new way. It's fascinating to me. Like, I've read about this 53rd gate many times before, but it didn't mean to me then what it meant to me now, reading it this morning. So basically, if you know anything about the human design system, or even there's this astrological idea that the nodes of the moon indicate the movement or progression from where you've come from to where you're going. And in the human design system, the suggestion is that around midlife, you start to transition from the energy of the south node to the energy of the north node. So sometimes I think about that, like, where am I headed? What's going to be happening next? What am I doing here? And so I was contemplating this concept within my own life experience of externally fixated to internally grounded. And if I'm being honest and truthful, I have been in the past quite externally fixated. And I have been in movement from that to a more internally grounded space. It may surprise a lot of people from my past to hear me confess that I have been externally fixated in the past. And I will tell you that I did not know that I was that before. Consciously, it was kind of a trickster. Maybe this is true for a lot of us when we're contemplating shadows and patterns of behavior that we're maturing out of. It's like when I was in it, I didn't really realize, wait a minute, I'm being really externally fixated. Or maybe I can even say shallow. And all of those, it feels like those ideas, and again, I'm not wanting to speak of these things with a spirit of judgment about them. I'm wanting to be just an observer. But you only realize that you were shallow or vain or superficial when you broaden your awareness or your frame of reference. Does this make sense to you? So from my then focused point and from my then point of awareness, it didn't seem as though I was shallow or vain or superficial or immature. It's only now that I have moved into a process of sort of broadening my awareness that I can consider who I was and how I was presenting back then and say, okay, now I get that. And it was all from a space of insecurity. It's interesting for me to be expressing this out loud today. Let's see where this goes. So, as a younger person, to a lot of people, it would have appeared as though I had my act together. I was good in school, always got good grades, didn't break any rules, was fairly easy to get along with, although I was a bit withdrawn. I didn't do a lot of social. I was kind of insulated. So it's easier to get along with someone who you're not sort of intimate with. But from that perspective, what was going on inside me was more like, I wonder if people find me handsome or attractive. I wonder, how do I explain this? Like whatever I perceive the external ideal to be, that's what I wanted to accomplish. So, for instance, within the realm of architecture and design, I went to architecture school. I was very successful at architecture school. I learned from modernists, and so modern architecture is, the thing to be and the thing to do among the culture that I was a part of. So let me show you how good I can do modernism. And then being a little bit embarrassed or ashamed if I didn't get to do modernism for whatever reason, and I, lowered myself to do some other style. That's just an example. After college, because I had been voted in high school most likely to succeed, well, then I had an external definition of what success would be. So, people should look at me and see that I have succeeded. So what does that look like? Well, I need a nice fancy car. Let me get the new Audi. And let me get my clothes at Banana Republic. And you see, now, again, I need to reiterate, I'm not judging any of this in myself or in anyone. This is not what that is. This is just an observation. I was really inspired in that time to each of these choices, to the focus that I was making, even with my physical body and the way I looked, and like, let me get into the gym and let me indicate that I'm taking care of myself, and I can say I look good naked, and maybe I'll get some positive feedback from out there. See, I'm just painting a picture. Externally fixated. And then my spiritual awakening process began, and I began this movement. And it was almost like I needed, or I benefited from moving through that period of being externally fixated in order to realize that there was still something missing, or for me, there was another journey to embark upon. So it was all part of this process. If I hadn't experienced it, one may ask, would I have been inspired to turn within? That's a really brilliant question. I don't know. So the focus has begun to shift toward internal groundedness. And what I will say that I had no way to expect was the external chaos that I may have felt. I couldn't have predicted the external chaos that I would have perceived or been challenged by in this movement toward internal groundedness. But in fact, that was also part of the process, because internal groundedness in truth implies that regardless of what's going on out there, you are maintaining your inner equilibrium in here. And so I had experiences where I did not maintain my inner equilibrium, and I saw the result of that, or received the result of that. And then ultimately there was a pivotal moment where I renewed the commitment to my internal groundedness, regardless of all of this external stuff. And I just chose it. I know who I am. And that's a statement internally between me and myself, you see. And you can take that claim and take it with you through any number of strange circumstances. It doesn't matter what's going on. I know who I am. It's very powerful. And it's a constant process. So that's where the contemplation began for me. And then it also shifted into the maturation of our species. So we're each on an individual journey, but part of maturation is becoming aware of the collective journey and the role that you play in the maturation of the species. What is our species becoming? What does it look like in its maturation? And part of what inspired this, if you're not aware of Matthias de Stefano and you're interested in these kinds of conversations, I would really encourage you to search and look at some of the material that's available on YouTube that he has put out. And you can also, he has a series on Gaia, which I've mentioned before, Gaia Television. My sense is that he and others and me, I can make this claim too. My sense is that humanity is at a pivotal moment, a crossroads, where this maturation is occurring, and all of this external confusion that we're seeing is a part of that process. It's like I said about my individual process. Like, there's this external chaos of all of this stuff that's being exhumed and unearthed so that we confront it, transmute it, release it as we're moving to a new octave of expression as a species. So contemplate that. I hope this has been of value to you. I hope some of the connections that I made are relevant to you. Think about your experience. Think about that potential movement from externally fixated. And how are you currently externally fixated? I still am. I'm still dealing with that, you know. I still have vanity. I still find myself wondering at times, how is this being received? What are people thinking? Am I succeeding out there? All that's kind of still there, but it's just meaning less and less to me, or I'm giving it less and less meaning. And so I hope you can relate to that. But then the next level of this conversation is, if I'm part of a species that has potential in this time, in this moment, how am I, with my consciousness, contributing to that movement, to that maturation? Gosh, this feels really good. I really appreciate you joining me. That maybe feels a little heavy to some of you for a Saturday. I don't know when you'll be watching this, but I appreciate the opportunity to express. And again, I hope it was meaningful to you. And I'll leave it right there for today and connect with you again tomorrow. Thank you.